could you explain who you are and your credentials?
Right, so my name is Bart K. I'm a former professor of health science. I worked for about 20 years in academia in something like 10 different universities on 4 different continents at various times, during which time I specialised firstly in the physiology of rest and exercise, the classic exercise physiology is what that was. Then from there I went to human nutrition for a bit, and then after that I specialised in cardiovascular pathophysiology, which is the causes and prevention of heart disease, atherosclerosis, basically. All of that is overarched by quite a good understanding of statistical inference, statistical calculations, research ethics and all of that, because I've done quite a bit of research and published quite a few articles in my time on various topics as well in various places. I've also undertaken successful consultancies in the multi-million-dollar range, not for me, unfortunately, but for the university that I was working for at the time, with such organisations as the New Zealand All Blacks, the Royal Australian Defence Force, the New Zealand Army, and several other notables, including the NRL Referees Association. So that's kind of my background. That's where I'm coming from. These days, I'm a permanently retired academic, and I am instead a YouTube influencer, I guess. I run several YouTube channels. The main one is about human health from the point of view of what I believe to be the optimal diet for a human being. And I spend the rest of my time these days. I've just bought a 40-acre farm where we're doing regenerative farming, organic farming of beef and sheep, and we have a few other animals around the place doing other jobs for us as well, and that includes a couple of Australians at the moment. I'm just joking about that a bit. They're not really animals, they're just good kids that have come to help us out and stay with us for a bit, and that's awesome. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. Awesome.
All right, let's get right into it. What should a person eat every day?
Right, every day. Well, if you're eating on any given day, because you don't actually have to eat every day to survive, but I mean, it's kind of a thing that people generally tend to. A lot of people tend to eat multiple times a day, and the reason for that is not because people should or need to eat multiple times a day, it's because they're eating the wrong thing. Human beings have evolved over the last roughly 4.5 million years from our immediate predecessors to this point in time now, during a period, as I said, of about 4.5 million years, where the food consumed by humans during that period of time is demonstrably, unequivocally established by some hard science. And the answer is the meat and associated fat, mostly of large ruminant animals, and very little of anything else.
So what's your cut of steak to recommend? What would be the best cut?
I love picanha, personally, which is rump cap for those that don't know. I love, it's not a cut, it's a particular breed though. I love the Wagyu. I think that's awesome.
With and you eat once a day, is that right? I think I've heard
that's right. Yes, my regimen is to eat once a day, and only once in terms of meals. There's no necessity to eat more often than that. That completely takes care of my hunger and satiety signaling, because I'm eating the right stuff, which is energy dense, and I don't eat anything that's the wrong stuff. Plants, as it turns out, are the wrong stuff for humans to eat, basically.
I guess the carnivore lifestyle diet, it's probably not even a diet, it's just a way of
It's just a way of eating, yeah.
Is gaining traction. I mean, a year ago I didn't even hear about it, and I'm a journalist who reads papers and watches the news every night and things like that. But most people still think you have to have fruit and vegetables. How hard is the fight against this propaganda, and what's the future like in that sense? Like, even people as credentialed as yourself would say you need to eat fruit and vegetables. So how do you expect an average person on the street to know what to do?
Right, okay. The average person on the street would have no means of determining which academics are credible or not credible if they didn't themselves have some scientific knowledge. The quite rare capacity for genuine, independent thought, individual formulation on all of that, you'd have no hope, is what I'm telling you. And if you use the metrics by which academics are usually deemed to be credible or otherwise, that's not going to help you either, because all of those metrics that they judge the goodness of academics by, they're all social proof scores type things, really. They're all about, how good is this particular academic at being conciliatory with reviewers, for example, getting things published. How active are they in putting work together of whatever quality? What are their student satisfaction scores like? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
None of them actually determine who is right and who is wrong about basic first principles. So when I say the correct diet for a human being is hyper-carnivore with as little plant material as possible, if you please, that's my opinion. And it's my opinion based on my significant understanding of human physiology, human nutrition science, cardiovascular pathophysiology, and science in general, I suppose.
Just on that, can a person, now we're talking about 98%, there are some small percentage of the population that probably need other things, but let's just get that out of the way. We're talking about the vast majority of people. If the vast majority of people, could they live off eating red meat, salt and water, and that's it?
So long as they eat enough fat with the red meat, yes.
Yeah.
Fat
is amazing, isn't it? Most people wouldn't think that.
No. Well, that's because they've been indoctrinated and led to believe their entire lives that they must eat the rainbow. Because just the other day I was saying to my lovely partner, Pim, geez, I feel a bit short on red this week. I've got a deficiency of sky blue pink, it seems. No. Okay. We're led to believe that balance in our diet is a good thing. Well, that's a great bit of propaganda, isn't it? Because you say the word balance and that invokes thoughts of goodness, fairness, justice, and everything that's on the light side of the force. What I'm saying to you is join me. I will complete your training. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, there is absolute that what I was getting to with making the point that what I say about human diet and what the ideal human diet is, that's my opinion. The reason I'm making that very clear is because there is no acceptable hard science, interventional experimental science that we can go to that will tell us the answer. It does not exist in the science. It's a hole. Why not? Because you can't do experiments on human beings.
In a lab for controlled experiments in the lab.
It's not ethical. It's not practical in terms of the logistics of it, and it's not practical financially.
I actually find this whole carnivore thing very easy too, because you know what you're eating every night. And I didn't realize as well how good steak tastes until it was cooked in butter compared to oil. Talk to us about butter. If you're eating a diet, you're cooking your food in butter compared to olive oil or even worse, vegetable oils. How big a difference is that to your health?
Right. Again, there is no hard science, experimental science that I can tap that will give you the answer. The best that is possible is to look at the incidence of various disease processes in a large cohort of people followed with some kind of decent detail for a reasonable period of time. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist either, because that would be equally impractical. So we're stuck with this thing called epidemiology, which is actually a really, really watered down, really poor branch of pseudoscience as that relates to human nutrition specifically. And I am caveating my slur on epidemiology to human health epidemiology specifically. Other branches of epidemiology are very, very useful hard sciences, but not human health related epidemiology. It's nonsense. The processes that are undertaken by researchers in those fields are unacceptable remotely scientifically to anyone who knows anything about science, or even stops for a few minutes to just do a cursory look at the methodologies that are being used and go, hang on a minute there. Pardon? What? So, again, I have to give you my opinion based on my understandings of some biochemical interactions and what that knowledge in that field tells me is that polyunsaturated vegetable oils from plant sources tend to be associated with the upregulation of two very major pro-inflammatory pathways. Does that equate to an actual health outcome? We don't know. But inflammation that's chronic is never good. Never a good thing at all. Inflammation being the etiology, the underpinnings, the causal underpinnings of just about every health problem that Westerners suffer in their lives. Just about everyone.
So in a nutshell, if you get your inflammation under control, it's your opinion, everything else takes care of itself.
Well, that's not only my opinion, that's also what I observe in my practice, where I consult one-on-one with people that have health challenges or want reassurance that they're doing the right thing by eating this crazy carnivore diet, or need me to reassure them that there is absolutely no cause for concern on the basis of some lipid levels in their bloods, for example, or any of these other kind of nonsensical, anti-scientific claptrap ideas that people are having shoved down their throats by perhaps well-meaning, but ultimately indoctrinated puppets of an evil system.
It was interesting. I went to just a real quick story from me. I went to a doctor last year actually, and I just got a normal blood test done just to check, and my triglycerides were slightly high. The first thing he said to me was, "Here, take this statin." He didn't ask me any other question. It was statin straight away, and I thought, that's suspect to me that he's prescribing the drug before asking about how much do you drink, how much carb intake. Should we be? That's the other thing that we've got to sort of be wary of, prescribing pills when there's a natural way to look after this. And statins also have a lot of bad side effects too. What do you think about that in terms of the way I just want to shove a pill down everyone's throat?
Right. Well, the allopathic medicinal community is bought and paid for outright by Big Pharma. They own it from the ground up in terms of how the whole thing's funded and how it all comes together. Those companies also have enough money to lobby governments hard enough to actually have complete and utter control over the acceptable narrative. Doctors are not allowed to have an opinion. They are not allowed to think for themselves. Being an allopathic medicinal professional is a paint by numbers, put your feet in the yellow circles, toe the line, if then. If the patient presents this way, then do that, etc., etc. What I will, however, say about what you've just outlined is that it's very strange that the doctor would do that, because the class of drugs known as statins, HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors, in other words, they act by lowering cholesterol and a bunch of other things that should not be lowered, including cholesterol, which itself should not be lowered, by the way.
I took the drug for 3 months and my triglycerides dropped down, but my HDL dropped down too, and my LDL stayed about the same.
Right. The thing here is,
it was fine. My actual everything on the lipid panel for me was fine except triglycerides, but it just felt odd and I've stopped taking it.
The point here is this: the statin drug is designed to lower your cholesterol. It is not designed to have any impact on your triglyceride. And neither should you try and reduce your triglyceride either, any more than you should try to attempt to have an effect over your cholesterol. You should not do that. The level of both cholesterol, well, all the different forms of cholesterol, as they call them, that's also nonsense. There's only one form of cholesterol, by the way. But the level of all of these things in your blood, cholesterol, all its different classes of carriers, and all the other lipids, including triglycerides, they are all under the influence and control of your gene set. You, my friend, your genes are the absolute pinnacle of 3,800 million years of evolution at least. Your genes really know what they're doing. We should just let our genes get on with it, frankly. And the reason I say that, among other reasons, is because of the very serious negative side effects of statin medication, among others, and the fact that there is absolutely no evidence or indication of their effect on any hard human health outcome, cause and effect, over any period of time under any sort of observation and control whatsoever. Yeah, it's a complete gamble.
Hearing more and more about, which you didn't hear this 10 years ago in the mainstream I guess the internet is helping people like yourself get a voice. And
well, to some extent it is, and to other extents it's actively hindering me. Because I espouse a message that's not approved narrative of a certain organisation whose initials might be WHO. I am hard handbraked by the YouTube algorithm
okay.
for that reason.
Well, that's why I'm giving you a voice here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The other thing is fibre. Let's talk about fibre now, because obviously on a carnivore diet, there'll be no fibre in your diet. I think I talked to you briefly about how that still didn't stop me being regular. I think I'll say that too.
Yeah.
Talk to everyone. Most people understand if you eliminate sugar and carbs, that's probably a good thing, but not many people, if you ask them in the street, would say eliminating fibre is a good thing. Tell me about everything you think about fibre and what your opinion on fibre is.
Okay, the exact amount of evidence extant anywhere that proves that fibre is beneficial for human health or any hard health outcome in human beings of any kind is none whatsoever. It does not exist.
Astonishing.
It is astonishing, and it's astonishing that we have this narrative that's accepted without question by almost everybody in the industry, mostly because they're not allowed to have an opinion, that says fibre is great. Fibre keeps you regular. No, it doesn't, actually. If anything, fibre tends to be associated with what they call idiopathic constipation. By the way, if you don't know the term, idiopathic is a medical term for we do not know what's going on here or why.
Okay.
That's what it means.
Thanks for
but your doctor's not going to say to you, I don't know, because doctors are not allowed to not know, are they?
It's a good fancy word that most.
It's a good fancy word they can use that you don't understand, probably, which stops you from going, oh, it's idiopathic. Okay, right. Well, it's not idiopathic. It's the fibre that's causing the problem, most likely. Mostly because fibre is not a nutrient for a human being. We do not have the machinery to break down fibre and produce anything that we can use for any purpose ourselves. There is a small amount of fermentation of fibre that can occur in our colon due to some bacteria that can establish themselves in our colons if we eat a diet rich in fibre, thus feeding those bacteria. Always there is waste. That's why most people are doing large, bulky stools every day, because you can't absorb that stuff.
It's interesting.
It's inflammatory, it seems. It interferes with gut function, it seems. It's associated with more leaky gut, it seems. What we find invariably with people with gut dysfunction diseases and all of those kind of dysfunctions that go on there is that when you remove all the fibre, all the plant material, all the irritants from someone's diet, miraculously, it's almost as if we've been eating that way for the best part of the last 4.5 million years. Oh, that's right. We have. And as such, therefore, our organ systems are designed that way, and I mean designed by both positive and negative selection pressures over that period of time, such that we are absolutely geared up to have our optimal health and vitality on that diet, i.e., almost nothing but the muscle meats, by the way, not organs, muscle meats and associated fat of ruminant animals.
And salt is a very important part of that.
Well, plus or minus, that's very individual. Your mileage will vary on salt as to how much salt you need. Luckily, we have this instinct that tells us how much salt we need.
Okay, I love salt. So
I love salt too. It's also my salt. Everything I eat, just about.
Me too.
And the last time I checked my blood pressure, which just happens to have been last night, because why not? Having sat in a chair for 5 minutes, I put the blood pressure tester on, and it's 117/77, I think it was.
Yeah, I noticed my blood pressure come down as soon as I stopped eating carbs.
Yeah.
It was amazing how quick it came down.
Yeah. And there's a reason for it. There's a mechanism. Because, again, the hypertension that a lot of people suffer is referred to by our friends in the allopathic medicinal community as idiopathic. It's idiopathic hypertension. So we all know what that means now. That means the doctors don't know why. Well, those of us that understand physiology do know why. Here's what it is. The ability of your kidneys to retain many of the electrolytes, i.e. filter them out of the urine back into the blood to keep them high, is an insulin-dependent pathway. That's one of the other roles of insulin, as well as it channels sugar around the place, out of the blood and into the cells, for example. It's also involved in channeling other ions in and out at the kidney tissues. If your insulin is high all the time, higher than it ought to be, because maybe you're eating a whole bunch of carbohydrates, which will do that to you, because we're not supposed to eat any of those. The exact dietary requirement for carbohydrates in human beings, not 1 single gram ever. None. Zero. Zip. Actually, anyone that doubts me, go and look up gluconeogenesis. We're done with that argument. Finish. Okay? So anyway, you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, you get this unnatural, chronically elevated blood insulin going on. Your kidneys are unable to excrete excess sodium that you don't need for that reason. That's what's driving your blood pressure up. So instead of saying the correct thing to patients, what doctors should say, which is like, well, for goodness sake, stop eating carbohydrates, that'll come right, they tell the people to stop eating salt, which isn't going to help because they can't excrete it.
That's what I still feel sorry for the average person, though, because if you can't believe your doctor, who can you believe when you're in the office?
Well, trust me, I'm the science. I'm safe and effective. Me, don't question the science. I'm joking again.
Now, I want to get on to you're carnivore for 6 months, say now, and you do a blood test, and it's a common thing.
Yep.
Triglycerides tend to go down, but LDL goes up. What do you say to a person who has high LDL? Because a lot of people, including cardiologists, will say it's the LDL that is the reason why you're having
high, according to whom, on the basis of what? Would be my first question.
The community.
The community. We're going to appeal to consensus fallacy then, is what they're going to do. Because the exact amount of extant evidence linking LDL, which by the way is not cholesterol, so I'm not going to call it that, but linking LDL, a lipoprotein transporter of lipids, including cholesterol, but not limited to cholesterol, by the way. The exact amount of evidence linking that stuff in a cause and effect way to atherosclerosis heart disease is none at all, not a single scrap anywhere. The same as any other evidence for cause and effect on health outcomes of any kind on anything else to do with humans, for the same reason. We can't do experiments.
Yeah.
It's a theology. It's a bought and paid for theology, and it's bought and paid for by people that make drugs that lower this stuff in your blood, despite the fact that you should under no circumstances do that, in fact.
I guess people don't think about it, but if you actually think about the pharmaceutical industry, they don't want you to be healthy. They want you to stay on the drug. That's the whole point. It's not about take this pill and then in 2 weeks you'll be fine and you don't have to buy it again. It's about keeping you on the drug, and people, they tend not to think about it. Oh, they'll just pop the pill, but they don't realize that the drug industry is there to keep you on the drug.
Yes, they're there to make money out of it.
People don't question that either.
No, they don't. Because people are also indoctrinated, it seems, not to question the medical professional, to treat their medical professional as if they're some kind of deity that somehow deserves much more respect than, in fact, most of them do, it seems.
It's going to be very interesting to see how much of what you tell me I'll be allowed to print, because I've already talked to a cardiologist in Australia who said pretty much what you've said. Virtually no one needs to be on a statin, and they didn't. Not
only do they not need to be on one, it is absolutely contraindicated. It is a known mitochondrial metabolic poison with not one single indication for its use in any patient under any circumstances ever. Those are the facts. I'm sorry if your editor doesn't like these facts. Nonetheless, they are facts that I've just given you. Hard facts.
Okay, now, next question I want to ask you. Someone keels over of a heart attack.
Yep.
And the autopsy is done and they have clogged arteries.
Yep.
What causes that?
The clogging in the arteries is almost entirely consisting of scar tissue and clotting factors. This is an immune dysfunction, and an autoimmune dysfunction underpinned by inflammation underpinned by endothelial cell injury or injurious agents, and the deterministic model by which we put together the actual etiology of atherosclerotic heart disease includes the histology of the tissue, which I've just outlined to you. There's almost no cholesterol there. Almost none. Less than 0.1% in most lesions. Why? Because it's scar tissue and clotting factors, actually, not cholesterol.
So cholesterol isn't a lot. Most people seem to think if you have high cholesterol, it's slowly laying itself down in your arteries over your.
Well, here's the thing. The reason that the cholesterol in your blood is elevated is because your genes know what they're doing. As I said, they are transcribing more of these lipoprotein carriers so that you can carry a higher amount of cholesterol around your bloodstream and deliver it to the tissues that vastly desperately need it. One of the many roles of cholesterol is that it makes up 50% by weight and volume of every single cell membrane of every one of the several trillion, with a T, cells in your body. So if you have endothelial cell injury, those endothelial cells that are injured will be screaming out for raw materials to make repairs.
Okay.
And that will include cholesterol.
Okay, now that makes a lot of sense. This is the question I wanted to ask you. Now, forgive me if it's a silly question. Because
there are no silly questions.
Well, that might be. Now, you live a life, this is person A.
Yeah.
I live a typical Western diet for decades.
Yeah.
And they've got high amounts of inflammation.
Yes.
And then they go straight to carnivore.
Yeah.
And then, so does it matter if you have decades of inflammation? Go straight to carnivore, your LDL goes through the roof.
Yeah, as it will.
As it will.
Mm-hmm.
But you've had decades of inflammation. How does that, is there any risk there, if that makes sense, that you're introducing high amounts of LDL into a body that was previously or may still be inflamed? That might sound like a silly question, but I'm wondering,
well,
as soon as you get onto carnivore, does those decades of inflammation go away, or do they somehow?
Well, look, I consult privately with folks that want second opinions on what they've been told by medical professions or whatever else. I don't give medical advice. I don't prescribe drugs or anything like that. I give opinions based on my significant understandings of the science, based on what someone's been told or whatever else. And, many, many times that's the story. I went carnivore and my LDL shot up through the roof, which it will do for a lot of people that have that kind of inflammation, precisely because your body's going, now, fantastic, now I can deal with this inflammation. Here are the raw materials you need to make these repairs. Blaming heart disease on cholesterol is akin, logically, to turning on the television, seeing a forest fire, seeing scenes of firemen scurrying around, and blaming the fire on the firemen. It's ridiculous. That's as good as the science gets. I kid you not. And anyone that would tell you otherwise is bought and paid for.
So for decades we've blamed the wrong thing, basically.
Correct. Look, I can dismiss that very, very easily, very simply, and it doesn't even take long. Here we go. Atherosclerotic lesions, heart disease, occur in the endothelial cell linings of your arteries. And only your arteries. Never ever veins. Unless you take a vein out of the venous system and you graft it into the arterial system, i.e. a bypass operation, for example, then that vein, which has now become an artery, suddenly becomes susceptible to atherosclerosis heart disease, where it previously was not as a vein. Morphologically, it's the exact same tissue. We've just moved it from the low pressure side of the system to the high pressure side. Now, both sides of the blood pressure system, the arterial and the venous, both carry the self-same blood. That contains the self-same cholesterol and lipoprotein carriers of cholesterol. We're done.
I know.
We're finished with that. There is no way that cholesterol or LDL could be the cause of heart disease, because it seems like what's required is high blood pressure or higher blood pressure.
Yes.
But we can go a bit further than that, and less, because why not? This is one of the areas I studied for many years.
Go for it.
The lesions that develop in the arterial side only, that is, the heart disease, they also develop in absolutely predictable zones and patterns within the arterial tree. It's not an even development of lesioning across the inside of the lining of the hole.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay, yeah. That's interesting.
So, we are double done with cholesterol as the cause.
Just, again, a quick anecdote. I know we don't do anecdotes in science, but you can...
Well, we do. We collect a lot of them under discipline, and that's data.
I know someone who I'm extremely well, a family member who is now suffering from heart disease due to atherosclerosis. Now, show me their blood profiles for the last 10 years, and they have all-time low levels of LDL, and they've still got a blockage. To me, that's another reason why, if you lower your LDL, people are saying you won't get blockages. But I know someone that has one, and their LDL is lower than actually all their lipid panel is at an all-time baseline low, and they've still felt the blockage. Voila.
Well, because LDL has nothing to do with causing what we're calling a blockage, the lesioning of the endothelial cell lining of the high-pressure side of the arterial tree in very predictable patterns.
What about dementia?
Dementia is multifaceted. Well, yes, it is, and it is often an inflammatory-based, immune-based dysfunction, depending on the exact kind of dementia that's going on. Dementia is not my area of expertise. It is a multifaceted area of study of its own accord, so I'm not really going to make too many comments about dementia. I'll refrain myself to talking about the things I really am absolutely a demonstrated expert in, if you don't mind. But the heart disease thing there, these predictable patterns, the patterning of where lesions occur is where the blood flow is turbulent.
Okay.
So that happens at bifurcations, splitting points around various predictable patterns around that splitting of an artery in two, or when you've got a big curve, say like the aortic arch.
Yeah.
The blood that travels around one side of that arch has to travel faster than the other side. The side that's slowed down has a turbulent flow. That's where the lesioning occurs, where the turbulence is. It turns out that the transit time of blood under high pressure across those tissues is what's doing the physical damage that's causing the inflammation, the reaction to the inflammation, i.e. the retention of LDL so it can deliver its cholesterol payload, the lesioning, the clotting factors, the immune response, the deposition of scar tissue over time, and eventually the calcification of the scar tissue.
Interesting.
So what we need is high blood pressure chronically.
Yeah. What's high blood pressure, by the way?
Well, again, you can throw a number at it, but everyone is a slightly different animal. Your mileage will vary.
What numbers would you say, on average, is starting to get too high?
Right. I like to keep my blood pressure under 120 over 80, and 120 over 60 or 110 over 60 is better for me if I can keep that at that level. And I am doing that with my current lifestyle.
Yeah. And the carnivore lifestyle will...
Yeah. Now, obviously, like I'm 168 centimeters tall. It's 5'6" for those that speak the old language.
Yep.
So I'm not a tall individual. That affects my blood dynamics differently to someone who might be a 6 foot tall person.
Yeah, sure.
So my numbers are what seem to be good for me. Your numbers will vary slightly. What we need to avoid is chronically really elevated blood pressure, which the most common cause is idiopathic. No, it isn't. It's elevated blood insulin chronically as a function of eating carbohydrates, which, just remind me what the exact intake of carbohydrates required by a human daily is. None at all. Zero. That's the solution.
Yeah, okay. Just on the carnivore, kids. We often hear you don't put a kid in a gym when he's 10 to lift weights.
Right.
What about diet with children?
Well, we are absolutely evolved as human beings to consume the flesh and fat of animals almost exclusively post-weaning.
Yeah.
So you finish breastfeeding the child and they can go straight on to meat and fat, yes.
It's interesting. I got a 14-month-old, so
Right. Okay.
it's interesting what 14-month-old should eat, and I actually look at it now and it's just full of sugar.
Yeah. By the way, I also need to caveat all my statements with everything I say is aimed at the middle of the bell-shaped curve. It's as an average statement for the average Joe.
Exactly.
None of this is advice for any individual person that's reading or hearing or watching this video or whatever.
Yeah, we're for the average Joe here. That's
right. Yeah, and I'm not giving you advice. I'm telling you my understandings of the science and the physiology.
Yeah, you're telling me based on what evidence you've been presented.
Right, and with my understandings of the physical workings of the organism at hand, which is the human being.
Is eating once a day much more beneficial than eating twice? Or
for me, absolutely yes, and for many others that do the same thing, yes.
I eat twice. I just find it easier. But once, do you that's a case by case thing in terms of how?
Yes, depends on what stage you're at with the carnivore thing and what your level of residual problems and metabolic damage from your past sinful life may be.
So I still like drinking beer, so I'm not.
Yeah, me too. I can't help myself. I'm a hedonist.
I'm not giving that up for now.
I'm a human being as well. I'm not also some automaton that just says this is how you should eat, and I do so myself necessarily with 100%. No, I'm just telling you what's ideal.
I've decided based on what everything I've heard is to try to get to 80%.
Yep.
So I eat 2 meals so 14 meals a week. I've given myself 2 meals, basically maybe 3, just to eat whatever I want because I'm out of restaurant or whatever. But I figured if I ate 11 or 12 really hardcore carnivore meals, it's made a big difference actually. Energy levels gone through the roof.
Yeah.
I never felt. I've slept as well. I sleep. I don't wake up in the middle of the night anymore. Just sleep straight through.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to get away from myself there. So we've talked about diet. Let's talk about one thing I want to ask you, because I suffer from them, is PVCs. I get the occasional skip beat. I've been to a cardiologist and they told me they're completely benign. I tend, if I get 1 or 2, I just go for a walk and they go away.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd advise me on with PVCs, just if I could get rid of them?
Yeah, again, let's caveat all of this with this is not individual advice. Yeah. This is not advice for you in particular. I'm not prescribing you anything or telling you should do anything. What I will say is that there is a video on my YouTube channel called 5 Health Hacks You Need to Know. What it is basically is this program that's designed to lower a person's likelihood of having an elevated chronic systemic overburden of inflammation. It's an anti-inflammatory program. 5 health hacks, basically.
I've listened to it. I've listened to it, and we can quickly go through it real quick before the end of this.
Sure.
What I need to ask you about is exercise program for the average. This is I'm a journalist, so I'm talking about the average Joe.
Yeah.
Most people don't have a lot of time. I've listened to a few things about cardio is a waste of time, yet I've also read a lot of things that your VO2 max is a measure of longevity. So how do you talk to me about VO2 max and how...
VO2 max is a measurement of your individual maximum extraction of oxygen and utilization of that oxygen per unit time, whole body. It is associated with longevity if it's elevated within a certain range for reasons that people who tend to exercise also tend to have elevated VO2 max values. And the myriad benefits of appropriate exercise include a likelihood of increased longevity or reduced mortality, it would seem. But this is an association. The cause of living longer is not having the high VO2 max. In the same way that if I correlated the incidence of sunburn at any popular beach resort on any given day with the sale of ice creams, I'm going to find a very strong, very positive, and very predictable relationship between the sale of ice creams and sunburn. That does not mean it's appropriate for me to attempt to deal with the sunburn scourge by outlawing the sale of ice creams, because that's not going to help. In the same way that having a higher capacity to extract oxygen and use it per unit time is unlikely to keep you alive longer, all things being equal. But the other benefits of exercise appropriately undertaken absolutely do seem to be associated with increased lifespan, decreased mortality. And I hope that's kind of a clear distinction.
Yeah, like I said, I've listened to yourself and a lot of other people, and this is, tell me if I'm doing anything, what I'm doing wrong. Most people don't have a lot of time, so sure. I've decided to dedicate 3 40-minute sessions to exercise a week. I think most people can probably find 3 40-minute exercises. 2 of them are 8 days split, yes. And one of them's a high intensity interval cardio day.
Okay.
Tell me about, is that a good routine, 3 days a week?
It is good, but I'll tell you what I would do to make it better. Yeah. I'll drop your splits. Unless you are an advanced hypertrophy athlete trying to build the biggest musculature possible to compete with other bodybuilders, you do not need to do splits. You can do your whole body in somewhere between 11 and 13 big compound exercises with heavy weight at a high intensity relative to your 1 rep maximum strength, 2-3 times a week, and get fantastic benefits from doing that.
Yeah.
In terms of you having read some things saying that cardio is a waste of time, and by cardio what we mean is moderate intensity, long-lasting endurance style whole body exercise, I agree it is a waste of time unless you are an athlete competing in those kind of sports, in which case I would advise you to stop it, frankly. And in fact, it's probably contraindicated for your long-term prospects for a number of reasons, in fact.
What's better for you?
We can get into that on another day, though.
Yeah, I know. What's better? What's better for you? Doing high intensity interval training once or twice a week, or going on a 5K run every morning?
The first one.
Yeah.
Without any question. Depending on how hard you run the 5K.
Yeah. So
how fast you do it.
A lot of people think going on a 2K run or whatever it is 5 times a week is optimal for their health. Are they damaging themselves over decades?
That kind of volume is not going to be a major problem. The major problem you're going to get with athletes that overdo it on volume are athletes that are trying to compete and be, at a very high level in their endurance sport. I would suggest that several hours a week of that middle zone stuff is not likely to be a huge problem. But there is a definite inverted U-shaped or N-shaped curve that says too much volume of exercise absolutely is a problem.
Yeah.
And it becomes a psychological problem for many of these athletes. It becomes an illness.
I've read a lot about, I think the Ironmen that do the Hawaiian one, the real long one, a lot of them end up having heart problems later in life, don't they?
Yep. It's exercise-induced hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which means the heart muscle gets built up in the same way that a skeletal muscle gets built up by exercising, except it gets so big that it interferes with its own function. And then the heart doesn't work properly anymore.
Okay, so
it's rare, but it happens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think there's a few of them.
These are athletes that train for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a week.
Yeah.
Which absolutely, under no circumstances, should any human being who wants to maximize their longevity and health span prospects, nobody should ever do that, ever, under any circumstances. That's why I'm saying to these athletes, great, you need to do that kind of training if you want to be the best in that sport. So what I'm suggesting to you is stop doing that sport. It's not fit for a human being.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's go really in a nutshell in our last sort of 10, 15 minutes here.
Yeah.
A person like me has 3 40-minute sessions a week of exercise.
Yep.
What program would you put them on? Let's simplify it as simple as possible for the average Joe to say, I've got 3 40-minute sessions a week. What do you tell them? What would you do?
Right, pick 3 days a week that you're going to do it, and none of those days should be consecutive. You should always have at least a complete day of rest in between training sessions. I would do 2 rounds of a whole body splitter of 11 to 13 exercises, big compounds as I described earlier, at a sort of 8 rep maximum load, and I would do 2 working sets. And I would do all of that as a giant superset, rather than doing 1 exercise, 2 sets, then moving to the next exercise, 2 sets, etc. No sitting on the bench, looking at who looks nice in lycra. No sipping madly from a water bottle, drinking water you don't need, actually. This is a set, the next set, the next set, the next set, moving around. So obviously you better pick your timing in the gym if you've got to go to a gym to do this too. Otherwise this is going to be difficult. And your third session is probably a sprint repeat, possibly even with some hill work or dragging some weights around with you a little bit, smaller weights at first, bigger as you go along. And that's more about moving as rapidly as you can with some resistance through a series of sprint repeat type movements or activities, probably at something like a 5-to-1 rest to work ratio over the 45 minutes, so that your actual exercise time during that 45 minutes is going to work out to 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah. Is that ideal? Do you think that 3 day is that a good amount?
Yep.
2 minutes?
Yep. For most people, under most circumstances, no more exercise than that is either required or indeed likely to be helpful in any regard. Except that a person will adapt specifically to how they are exercising and training in terms of their intensity, their frequency, etc. I mean, all fitness adaptation is specific. Sure, there's some crossover, but not as much as people think.
What's your opinion on this Norwegian 4x4?
Outline it for me. I haven't really kept up with exercise physiology for a while.
I listened to it, a few influencers. Basically, you go as hard as you can for 4 minutes, then stop, then 4 minutes of just, on a bike, let's say, of just, you let your heart rate go back down, then you do it 4 times, basically.
Okay.
And apparently the research is at heart age is 20 years younger and all this sort of stuff.
All right, okay. Well, sure, it's a method. I would still prefer the intensity, the relative intensity to be higher than that, because anything that you can maintain at a high level for 4 minutes at a time is probably not actually anywhere near your actual top maximum level of voluntary power output, volitional power output per unit time. And as such, it might not be quite hitting all the right markers that I would like to see hit in someone's training.
Do you think weight training is more important than cardio training?
Cardio training, if you mean this endurance style exercise, then yes, absolutely. In fact, what I say to people is don't do that middle zone stuff. It is not helpful. You do not need it to tolerate high intensity work. This idea that your high intensity exercise is built on an aerobic base is what they call it. It's absolute nonsense. It doesn't enjoy any scientific background. This is a model put together by exercise physiologists last century. It's just never been questioned since. And it's wrong. It's demonstrably wrong in the same way that the model of atherosclerosis that we spoke about earlier is wrong.
But that's the problem again. People, who do you believe? I mean, you got someone who's become very famous in the last 2 years called Peter Attia saying you have to do zone 2 for 80% of your hours a week.
Okay. Peter Attia is a trained allopathic physician, not an exercise physiologist. I am an exercise physiologist. He is not. He's become very famous because he presents himself in a way that's personable, that is attractive to people, and he makes himself out to be credible in fields of study that he absolutely is not credible in. He is not an expert or an authority in anything. His level of training is he's an allopathic physician who's got his name on a few papers, leveraging his notoriety to get some actual academics to work with him and allow him to put his name on some papers so that he can now claim to be a longevity expert. He's nothing of the sort.
He's having a big influence, though.
He is, and wrongly. In the same way that many people get notoriety and influence around them that they do not deserve and that they should not have. Peter Attia is one of those people, and you can quote me on it. You can also quote me on saying he also lacks the integrity or courage to face me face-to-face to debate science with me. I wonder why.
Have you got a call from Joe Rogan yet?
I haven't.
Because he's a carnivore man, but he also has a lot of people on that you've been critical of.
Yep.
Well, in terms of And for me, it feels like Joe Rogan actually will just believe anything he's told, to be honest.
Well, I mean, Joe Rogan's bottom line is Joe Rogan's viewership.
Yeah.
His numbers.
Yeah. It's become
bums on seats.
Become about money, I think, for that.
And he will present himself in such a way as to give the people that he wants to give a platform to, he will give them a platform and they will get notoriety out of it because his podcast is so well subscribed and watched. And he will get what he needs out of it by picking people who will say controversial things. It's just a business thing.
Do you find that with yourself and Ken Barrier and Sean Baker, I think his name is?
Yeah.
Do you find you're getting a bit more love in that sense? You know what I mean? There's a lot more people coming out to talk about the way of life that you should be leading.
People that understand that the appropriate diet for a human being is hyper-carnivore and that plant material is not helpful and in any way to us at large, like as a source of food or nutrient. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's anti-nutrient, it's toxin, it's irritant. Plants basically don't want to be eaten, so the only way they can fight back is chemically, and they do. And the wool's been pulled over our eyes for generations that we should eat a diet rich in plants. No, we shouldn't. There is no evidence for that, and the inferences are quite clear when you remove plants from people's diets, that miraculous things happen to their health, coincident with that change in their diet. It's almost as if it's causal. But I can't claim that because I didn't do an experiment.
Well, I've done it on myself. And
we've all done N = 1, haven't we? And so our evidence, if you like, is millions of people who will give us the same sort of anecdotes.
Yeah, and in a nutshell, real quickly, for anyone that does listen to this, I'll do a 3-week timeline real quick for you.
Yeah.
I started carnivore. It was diarrhea a bit for the first week.
Mm-hmm.
Bloat went in 48 hours. I had no blood. Felt like I lost about 5 kilos in 48 hours.
Yeah.
But and then the sugar cravings started to go. After the end of the first week, they went.
Mm-hmm.
By the second week, I started to become more regular. Once a day at night time, I'd go to the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got more energy. And everything you and other people have said has happened. I didn't get no constipation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sitting on the toilet for 10 minutes at a time anymore, feeling like everything's coming out. It's just one little plop and I'm off. And everything worked. And I got more, I slept better. I got more energy. I feel better. Yet if I go back and have a pasta, I feel awful for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And so it does work, and I'm living proof of it. And it's just going to be interesting to see what the long term. You've been doing it for a long time.
Well, I'm into year 12 now of a 90% upwards carnivore existence. The other 10% in my case is alcohol.
Me too.
And coffee, and the odd indiscretion in terms of actual carbohydrate containing foods. Lately, I've been having a few bits of fruit. Don't tell Paul Saladino. He'll get excited.
You love Paul.
Oh, mate, me and Paul go way back, although he now pretends he doesn't know who I am.
All that, actually, doesn't know who
he's so brave and so sure of himself and so robust in his veracity of information that he will not even acknowledge my existence when I have publicly shamed and named him on a number of occasions for passing off demonstrably false misinformation to people. He's telling them they should eat hundreds and hundreds of grams of carbohydrates a day. No, you shouldn't do that. Not at all. There is nobody in the world who should do that. That's bad advice, Paul. Still.
And lastly, mate, just to for the reader that when I write the story, we can frame it real quickly.
Yeah.
A carnivore diet with 3 good exercise days a week.
Yeah.
And the occasional beer or 2 on the weekend and a takeaway meal occasionally.
Yeah.
Is that it in a nutshell? The way you should.
Well, that's a start. Obviously, the closer you can get to 100% carnivore, 0% plant material, the better, and maintain for the longest period of time. I'm not going to sit in judgment. I'm not perfect. I never claim to be perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. But that's what any person should aim for, ideally. Secondly, you should take 3 products from the sponsors, my sponsors, the folks with whom I'm joint ventured, not because I'll get a small commission if you do, but because you really should. because these are 3 products that do exactly what they claim to do. They are Stem Enhance Ultra, which releases your own adult stem cells from your bone marrow to your blood, whereupon those stem cells find tissues, cells, organs in your body that are worn, tired, diseased, dysfunctional for any reason, and they fix that. Isn't that fantastic? That's awesome. The second product is called Cyactive, which is an anti-inflammatory. It works on the LOX and COX pathways in exactly the same way as things like paracetamol do, but they do it without the potential problems and side effects of paracetamol. So that's pretty awesome. And thirdly, a product called Plasma Flow, which is an enzyme-based preparation designed to specifically target a protein called fibrin, which is a spiderwebby kind of bung that most people with chronic inflammation will have in their microvasculature, their capillaries, which prevents things like stem cells getting to where they need to be. It's designed to stop pathogens from moving around your body. It's designed to be an acute response that resolves, but chronic inflammation means it never resolves, so we remain gummed up. So we take that third product to dissolve that protein. That's the second thing you should do. The third thing you should do is ground yourself electrically for as much of the time as is possible.
Interesting.
The fourth thing you should do is block blue light from entering your eyeballs after sundown and before sunup.
Is that to do with your sleep?
It is. It's to do with your circadian rhythming. It's to do with your whole endocrine hormonal system getting messed up by you sending messages to your brain that it's daytime by having blue light entering your eyes when it's not daytime.
Okay.
It messes you up. So we clear that up. And the fifth thing you should do is the exercise that we've already spoken about.
Yep. Okay. And just the last thing, mate, thanks for your time, by the way. It's
My pleasure. Thank you for doing it.
I'm looking forward to writing a story on this in the coming days. What's the fight like against the misinformation in diet? Because, again, we've talked about it, just how difficult is all the propaganda going to be to overcome?
Right.
Is it an impossible fight? Because it feels like it is.
Well, if I thought it was not worth doing, I would have given up a while ago. I believe what I'm doing is right and just. I believe I'm doing God's work by sharing the actual correct scientific interpretations. I guess communicated to my viewership with absolute dispassion for opinion and saying, look, these are the scientific facts as we know them. These are the inferences that a right-thinking person should probably draw from these facts. And I leave people to make their own decisions as to whether they're on my side or whether they believe the conspiracy of the great they, the them, that bought and paid for consensus body that is just going to spout disinformation. Plus or minus, the social media thing helps or doesn't help depending on what side of the algorithm you're on at that time. It's a very much algorithm-based thing that drives how visible we can be and not be at any given time. I have, in about 6.5 years of trying to build an audience, I've built a followership of about 54,000 people that watch my videos regularly. Other creators have come along since I did and built bigger audiences than I've got because they're better at algorithm stuff, perhaps. Maybe they're better to look at than I am. Maybe they're less abrasive and confrontational as I am. Maybe they swear less than I do on my channel. I swear a lot.
We've kept it very professional, you and I.
Well, it's, we're doing a professional interview, so why not? Of course we should do that.
You're not in character. You're professional now.
Yeah, but look, I am always going to tell the truth as I see it based on my dispassionate understandings and absolutely, utterly, unassailably disciplined approach to espousing unassailable facts and leaving people to put those together in the way they think they should. I'm going to offer up a formulation of how I think these facts should be put together, but a person makes their own mind up. So much so that it does not matter one jot how many videos I make pointing out the errors, absolutely unequivocal, definitive, false information being put forward by the mainstream on many issues in health science. Doesn't matter how many videos I make pointing that stuff out. Not just different people, but the same people will be back the next week with their next video making the same errors again. It's like water off a duck's back. It's like the whole, if you repeat a message enough times with enough confidence and belief behind it, a number of people will buy that bill of goods from you. Safe and effective. Effective and safe. Backed by science.
We have cults all around the world, don't we?
We do.
It doesn't matter someone will believe something.
That's right.
It's amazing. And the other thing, just quickly at the end, I think the carnivore lifestyle is probably, it feels like it might be actually better for the environment. Like, you would only consume, I've been told, 1 cow a year, basically. It's probably better than vegan, what they go through to get their food.
That's not probably. It's demonstrably, clearly, obviously, to anyone with more than 3 brain cells, the vegan diet is vastly worse for our environment than a sustainable 100% carnivore diet based on a large ruminant animal as the staple.
Yeah.
Especially considering I'm raising them myself now on my own farm right here.
That's right. Your carbon footprint's quite low, I'd say.
It is. And let's not even go there in terms of the carbon argument. Let's not even go there, because it's one of those topics we cannot discuss on YouTube. However, the science is actually quite clear on this, and it's not what we're told the science on this is. I'll say that much.
I heard Elon Musk on Joe Rogan say that it's nonsense. So if he can say that, he's got a great reach. So I think it's been. I've enjoyed my chat, to be honest, and I think that the frustrating thing about it all is it's very simple. It's a very simple guideline in terms of what to eat and what to do with your body. But that's why I wanted to talk to you about it, so I can get that message across to the average Joe, I think, because most people don't understand. I think if everyone wore a glucose monitor and saw what their glucose did after they ate, they'd probably be shocked.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to talk to you today about making it very simple for people to understand that you can live a very simple lifestyle, but also it gives you great health benefits in return.
Yeah. Look, all I can suggest to people who may be interested in this crazy stuff I'm saying, this tinfoil hat stuff that goes against all the consensus out there, give it a chance. Come into my YouTube channel, which is easy to find. It's BART-KAY. So if you type in @BART-KAY in your search engine in YouTube, you'll find my channel. Binge watch all my videos and see if you can catch me out on saying anything that is demonstrably incorrect in fact. That's a challenge, because you won't find me doing that.
I've never heard. Have you ever heard someone say they tried carnivore and it didn't work?
Yeah, I've heard people claim that, but usually such arguments are pretty easy to get to the bottom of pretty quickly if you talk to these people or challenge them. Yeah. And it may well be that there are some people for whom their level of metabolic damage is so much that actually going straight to being a carnivore wasn't perhaps the right approach, and I may not have counseled them to do that. Did they have, or had they had, I guess, the foresight to come to me and ask for such advice?
Well, I'm enjoying it because I already know what I'm having for dinner tonight.
Excellent. Cool.
And I know exactly how I like it cooked. So
that's it.
That's beautiful. And again, you eat and you don't feel tired after it. When I wasn't at carnivore, every day between 2 and 3 o'clock, I had to get up and go for a walk because I'd fall asleep at my desk.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't happen anymore. It's amazing.
Yeah. All right. So just before we do close off, for anyone that is wondering, who is Matt and why are we having this discussion? Matt alluded to being a journalist. He didn't specify, and that's fine if he doesn't want to, but Matt is a journalist at a major source of news and information, I guess. And I'm very, very gratified that he's decided that, I might be worthy of writing a story about. And I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. And I'm going to re-listen to this interview, grab your best quotes, not quote you out of context, of course.
Better not, because I'll send you around. You don't. And I'm going to write a very basic. I'm going to write a very basic story on nutrition and a framework of exercise, and just get it out there, because I think a lot of people would be stunned to understand things like fiber are useless and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, good. Don't forget to plug my channel.
Well, definitely, we'll plug your channel, and mate, you can, if as long as my editor allows it to go through, you'll be able to read about Bart, the Daily Mail Australia website in the coming week or so.
That'd be awesome. Yep.
Well, mate, I appreciate.
Let me know how it goes, and if your editor wants to talk to me, him, herself, them, they, shim, shay, whatever, that'll be fine too. I'm happy to, sort of try and, smooth over anything that might be too frightening.
Well, the other thing is we've done stories on our website on carnivore diet, but more examples, cases. I've lost 50 kilos in a year doing this diet, but you're the first.
Right. Yeah. And listen, if you want to talk to guys like Anthony Chafee, MD, who is an Australian-based MD who's very, very big in the social media influencing in carnivore, if you want to talk to Sean Baker, if you want to talk to Ken Berry, they're all friends of mine.
Even there's a guy, Mason.
Paul Mason, yeah. I've done interviews with Paul. He's also a Australian-based MD that, just if you want to give it if that gives it some kind of perceived credence, whatever. I mean, I can tell you, however, though, that, when people ask him, well, who is it on earth am I? Who do I think I am? Well, why don't you ask Ken Berry? Because if Ken Berry isn't sure about anything to do with the science, and Ken Berry has a following of, I think he's got 5 million now. Guess who he asks? Guess who he asks about science? Yourself. That's right.
Yeah, so, he's just a family physician, isn't he? He's not as...
I wouldn't say just, but yes, he's a family physician that, yeah.
Well, I've really enjoyed the chat.
Likewise.
And hopefully we can get a good story written in the next week or so. And
nice.
Whoever listens to this, I hope I'm, in a journalistic way, that's what journalists, I think, we try to do, is keep things very simple for the person to understand, and just provide a basic framework rather than get too technical with questions.
Just the facts.
Just the facts. Get it out there, and then you can do whatever you want with it. So,
appreciate it. All right, my man.
So, mate, I appreciate your time. Thanks very much for everything, and I can't wait to eat my steak tonight. And
cool.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. Cheers.
You have a good day.
And you.